Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. Folks, we are right into the midst of it now. This is it. This is it. We've got an election process now. We've got about one more week, if you will, for the 19th of May, and that the ballots are going to be, they're going to be all counted for and whatever. And then right up front, we're going to probably do some predictions probably next week for you. If anything, we'll probably do that, that probably before the weekend of next week. And I'll have some of the other guys on, and we'll just all kind of talk about predictions, and then we'll wait for the 19th after that. But we really want you to get out there and vote. I mean, that's what you got to do, vote, and definitely rely on that on the voters pamphlet. I mean, that's where it's at. And when you start thinking about, and just little small stuff, when you start thinking about all the stuff that's coming into the mail aspect of it, I mean, there's a story right there. There's an election on some of this stuff. Some of these folks got full-page ads. I mean, where did they get the money? And some of these folks, I'll give one example, and that is the gentleman that I'm running against. His name is Ted Wheeler. You can tell he's still in boot camp. He hasn't shaved. I mean, he doesn't even have a tie on yet. Same thing. But the fact of the matter is that that's the person that I'm running against. And by the way, there's 14 other people running for mayor at this point in time. So, wow, a very interesting deal. No problem. That's one's right. You can do what you want to do. Okay, let's get right into the program. What we're going to do, we've got a person with us today that's running for the U.S. Senate. He's going to be running against Jeff Merkley. We got two senators, as you know, in the state of Oregon, and Merkley is going to be there. And Merkley is kind of near us here in the city of Portland, you know, the largest city in the state of Oregon. And there are some major issues. And in all due respect, I reached out to Senator Merkley, but unfortunately, he's still kind of into another mindset. When these people get elected to office, they may be Democrats or Republicans or independents or whatever, but they represent all of us here in Oregon. They represent, it's a non-party position when it starts talking about the representation of the state of Oregon. So, but guess what? I've got someone else that was willing and able to come on, and I'm really excited about this guy. We might even talk about a little bit about the sanctuary city piece. I reached out to many of the Mexicans who basically got their citizenship after George Bush, President Bush. President Reagan gave them the opportunity to get that citizenship. Well, that's another issue. That's another story. But I reached out to this gentleman that's coming on right now. His name happens to be Paul Romero, and he's running for the U.S. Senate. And this is another position right now. And then election will become partisan. And actually, then there's the two major parties, one conservative and one liberal aspect of it. But anyway, we got Romero. Come on, Star Romero. How you doing today?
Hey, buenos tardes.
Oh, good. All right, fantastic. Well, like I said, folks, this is my pod, and we want to communicate with the majority of the people. And sometimes we're not as sophisticated as whatever. But the fact of the matter is, we got someone. We're going to talk to him. Paul, again, welcome. And again, by the way, thanks for serving. I noticed look like you got a military jacket on today, and in fact, it's going to be interesting because we got other folks who are going to be joining us are also military, like I am. Right? Yes. And you'll notice that, and very, very important that we involve the veterans in this election process because they've served their country. And so, for some reason, I want to make it very clear that there's no such thing as being anti-America from my particular standpoint. This is America. This is the United States of America. And these folks have all served their countries, and we want to make sure we understand that piece, okay? With that, I've said enough. Mary, we're going to give you a little time now to kind of share with the voting public about why should they vote for you? Why are you running, Romero? Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, the reason I'm running is I got a little tired of politics as usual, and I was getting more and more angry once I got out of the military, came back to the United States and started to see what was going on, came back to my home state, was really not happy. And there was a conversation in a group I was part of in Prineville, and they were saying that we needed someone to run against a candidate in the primary, somebody who wasn't a career politician, somebody who would step up. And I'm like, yeah, we need that guy. I wasn't thinking about myself. And one of my mentors pulled me aside and said, Paul, you need to run for this office. I said, I don't even know where to start. I'm not a politician. He said, that's exactly why you should run. And so from that point forward, it just started to kind of snowball. But my first two go-arounds, it was really kind of the experience and learning what needs to be done in a campaign. There's no book on how to run for office for dummies, right? And
Great.
so in the process, that's what I've done. And for this cycle, running for the U.S. Senate against Jeff Merkley, I was called by someone pretty important in my life, and they asked me to actually run. And when I did this, we started planning this back in March 2019, not just how to win the primary, but also how to win against Jeff Merkley. And we are primed and ready to go.
Okay, fantastic. So what do you think are some of the major issues? And then just throw it out on the table. What do you think is, I know that
right now we have a governor who's quite literally abusing the entire state of Oregon. And it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, we are all suffering, and it's time that Oregonians step up. We have a governor who's basically violating state law as well as our constitutional rights, and this cannot be allowed to continue. We have an attorney general that really should be stepping up and making our governor toe the line, but our attorney general is worthless as well. This has become such a problem here in the state of Oregon. We have this issue where Oregon ranks like in the bottom 5 of all the states who've had the least number of COVID cases and the least number of deaths. And yet, we're going to be like one of the last states to actually reopen. There's no logic. There's no reason to this. And fundamentally, what we're seeing is, Kate Brown made a comment about the Republican walkout that prevented the state of Oregon, who, by the way, Oregonians used to live, okay? And then over time, with a certain socialist element in the state, they've gone from living to surviving. And now we have an administration who's literally infringing on that survival. And this has given them the perfect platform to really put the thumb screws to all Oregonians. The question is, will there be enough time, which I believe there is, in this cycle to turn the state and to put it back in line? And what we're seeing right now, based on all the information we have, is that we're going to see a big red wave for Oregon, but it's going to have big streaks of blue in the middle of it. And that is exciting to me because, the real question here, you see it on behind me, is how do we bring balance back to Oregon? And the simple, short answer is we cultivate common ground. And right now in Oregon, we have more common ground than we have ever had. And this is the time for JFK Democrats to step up and go, you know what? No more. We're gonna help turn the tide. So.
Okay. What specific concerns that you had in regards to Kate, the governor? You mentioned something. We had small talk initially.
Well, as far as the sanctuary state status.
Right. Okay. All right.
This is a direct violation of federal law and our Constitution. And as it stands right now, all these governors that are involved with China, that are pushing sanctuary status, they are all under the microscope of the Department of Justice and our president. Basically, what I see is that pressure is starting to be brought to bear on our governor. And that's also why you might notice that she's actually starting to open things up officially. However, she's also saying, well, you didn't really have to close, but I appreciate that you did. We were all under the direct impression that we all had to close. This has become a real issue. And for the state of Oregon, reopen Oregon, we got to get this economy going again. And I have no doubt that it's going to recover very quickly, but we can't have people that are inhibiting the very lives of Oregonians, all because they're trying to get a big paycheck from the federal government. This is where Kate Brown, she's got a huge mess on her hands. She's lost a major court battle with regard to land rights in the state of Oregon to the tune of $1.4 billion. And by the way, Oregonians are on the hook for that. In addition, that's $11,000 a day in interest until they actually pay that money, right? Well, all that Kate Brown seems to be doing is burying Oregon deeper in debt. And all of that is going to be coming out of all of us. So the sooner she gets out, the better. And just to let you know, I've been given some information. Apparently, there's a new recall out on Kate Brown. It just came out today. And it's called Kate Brown Total Recall 2020. And we expect full bipartisan participation in this. That's the indication that we're getting. And I'm excited about this because it tells me that Oregonians as a whole are taking back the state. The thing you'll always hear me say is this: what makes America great, what makes Americans great, is what makes Oregonians great. When things are at their worst, we are truly at our best.
Okay, let's spend a little time now on Jeff Berkeley, the guy you're going to be running for. What do you think his faults are?
Well, let's
What
put
does
it
he
this way.
lack?
Let me tell you where this guy's at, because fundamentally, he's a socialist. He's kind of the heir apparent to Bernie Sanders. So actually, technically, in my opinion, he's most certainly a communist. Uh, when he was on the floor of the House, and one day he was actually the Speaker of the House in our legislature, and he made a statement on the floor of the House, and he said that veterans are domestic terrorists.
Hmm.
Now, you and I totally disagree with that basic statement, but
Very
the
much
truth
so.
is, for him to have said it, actually, it's true. See, he's a communist or a socialist, and as a communist or socialist, oh yeah, I'm most certainly his domestic terrorist. Okay, because if he comes to my country and he's trying to destroy it, then we're going to step up and we're going to protect it and defend it. And he's going into retirement. You know, at some point we have to make a stand. And Oregonians, we've been pushed around way too long, and it's just time for us to take back our state.
What do you think his position is on the whole issue with from a national perspective in terms of this whole issue with coronavirus?
You
Or is it,
know,
you know, do we stay
he
in the home or do you go out the home?
Yeah, well, I've not really heard him a whole lot on it, but I think he's been very supportive of the lockdown. We know he
Okay.
supports the New Green Deal. We know he supports the New Way Forward Act that actually pays money to people that we have ejected out of this country and bringing them back. Actual criminals. Makes no sense. He is very much geared to taking care of everybody except for the people that actually put him in office and who he's supposed to be representing. This is one of the biggest issues we have with the two senators we have. Neither one of them has the ear of the president, and neither one of them is working for Oregon in any real capacity. Many of them sit on committees for rural development or for agriculture. What have they actually done for this state? And the answer is nothing of any substance. So I'm always amazed by the people that get into office and they go there telling you what they're going to do. They get involved in certain committees, but they don't really do anything. And then they have the audacity to come back to the voter and say, oh, hey, I couldn't do this because I couldn't get enough votes. And, I'm just one vote in Congress. Oh, by the way, please vote for me again. And my answer to that is very simply, no, you're not done the job. You're not doing the job. Why should I keep you there to do the job? Let me give someone else an opportunity, a chance to actually do that. And for me, I have some plans and I will definitely have the ear of the president.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Tell you what we'll do. Why don't we just why don't we bring Jack in now, Steve, if that's okay with you. Let's bring Jack Kerford here in with us. Jack is running for city council, and that's just being that this is the largest city in the state of Oregon. Naturally, the impact of the state as it relates to the Senate and those folks in that swamp down there. Swamp.
Good morning.
They need
Good afternoon, Bruce and Paul. It's nice to meet you. Well, Paul, I am one of those Kennedy Democrats, so I'm a registered Democrat, but I'm still one of those Kennedy Democrats. But one of the issues that I'm particularly concerned about is our city and our state's position on business. Our city seems to look at, and I've heard many businessmen tell me this, the city and the state look at businesses as nothing more than an ATM machine and have done nothing really to try and bring in new businesses to our city or our state. In fact, if anything, with the new taxes that they've passed over the last 3 years, they've actually started to push out more businesses to other states, such as Idaho or Montana, from that standpoint. Now, the sad thing is I'm aware of the fact that Apple is particularly interested in coming to Oregon and setting up a new operation in the Portland metropolitan area. I actually had my campaign manager reach out to the head of business development for Apple and go down to Cupertino to meet with him because I had other engagements. And they told me that their position was they had tried to reach out to the city council, but quite candidly, at best, they would describe it as an ambivalent interest in Apple, and if not downright hostile to new businesses coming into the city. Well, that would bring in hundreds of new jobs to our city, which is right. And that was before the coronavirus. So imagine now that what we're faced with, where the city, the information I've gotten from the Oregonian is that in our state, there are over 400,000 people that are now unemployed, 1 in 5 people. And that does not even account for all the small business owners, whether it's medical practices, restaurants, dry cleaners, stores, chiropractors, it doesn't matter. Many of these businesses are not going to reopen. So the actual impact of the coronavirus will be dramatic for a much longer period of time. It's not going to be an economic recovery in 3, 6, or 12 months. Unfortunately, it may be, based on the economists I know and have talked to around the world, 2, 3, or 4, potentially 5 years. So we have to recognize we have to be proactive to try and bring business to our state and to our city of Portland to try and bring people back to work and reinvigorate our economy.
You know, I got a comment here if you'd like.
Go on.
What I see is, as an analyst, and kind of like I'm a big picture guy, right? What I see is I see an administration in this state who is literally trying to create an environment that is downright hostile to Oregonians. It is literally in a position to push people out, whether it's letting forest fires burn to the point that they create conditions for cap and trade, whether it's that they make it so business unfriendly, nobody wants to come here and thus takes the jobs with them, right? And this creates more problems for our people. And it's just a snowball thing. But the thing is, it's like everything has been geared by this current administration to make Oregon's environment very unattractive for anybody to be here. That includes people who've been here their entire lives. So my thought is that very simply, Kate Brown is trying to chase people out of Oregon. It's that simple. But why would she do that? Well, you only have to go as far as China. We see how tight she is with China. We see all the programs she's working with China. It's all about China. China's been buying up land, ranches, farms, you name it. And ever since the Monroe Doctrine was done away with, that has opened up that door. So one of the things that has to happen is the Monroe Doctrine has to go back into effect. And then any foreign ownership of land, farms, whatever, it's going to have to be forced into an auction situation where only entities that are not associated with China can actually purchase it, and they have to be American. You know, this is where the line's going to be drawn, and it's going to happen. And unfortunately for Kate Brown, she's holding the short end of the stick, whether she thinks it or knows it or not.
Okay. Well, look, I guess the only points I would make in regards, like you said, for business, we really have to be very, very creative now. Again, that's one of the reasons why I'm running for mayor. And so one of the things that just comes to mind right off the bat, here's an opportunity, because we're going with the coronavirus aspect of it, we have the opportunity to sanitize our city. Everybody's off the street and this, that, and the other. We could clean the place up real good. I mean, in all due respect, and just totally sanitize. And at the same time, make sure that we deal with the whole issue of homeless at that point in time. We had more jobs because they too need to be in a situation where we sanitize, give them the opportunity to be cleared of the virus itself. I mean, it's interesting how they're basically taking people off the street and they're not even checking them out, or giving them any medication, if you will, so that they could be sanitized by the time this thing is over with. Then, if hopefully we would have solved all of the homeless problems, and maybe some of these folks would have been able to get back on their jobs or go back to their homes, because a lot of folks just gave up houses. They weren't going to be paying any mortgages anymore. But the bottom line, they need jobs. It's the whole economic system. So my point is that we just need to be more creative at this point in time. I'm just throwing that out just as just a little something to deal with from as far as the senator is concerned. We may want to get a few bucks, if you will, from back in the swamp. Oh,
sometimes you just have to get Kate Brown to stop making it attractive to attract homeless to the state. And with all the things they're doing, even in Portland, making an environment where people have to have a designated area on their land, their property, for homeless to camp out. Come on, you have kids, you have your backyard. I don't think you want a bunch of homeless hanging around your kids, you know? So to even infringe on people's rights that way is amazing. It's even happening. They're even considering it. Well, like I said, they've made it attractive to the homeless. And I think by bringing more and more of that into the state, that is actually, it's done on purpose. it's making the environment less and less attractive to people who live here. And, with the homeless situation, we have everything from drug addictions, alcohol addictions, mental issues, and then people that just have given up and they have no purpose, no direction. But all of them have to be addressed in different ways. And I think for you as mayor, that's going to be a great opportunity to show what can really be done when the right people are in office.
I appreciate that. Jack's gonna be there. Jack's gonna be there also too, and Jack understands where I'm at, and vice versa. But we've got to vet the situation. We got to vet the situation. Some folks have been making some lucrative monies as a result of the whole issue of homeless, and we've got to identify these individuals and really come up with a solution, as opposed to just constantly just pouring more money into this situation, and it gets worse as opposed to getting better. You know what I'm saying? Besides that, they are human beings. I mean, we're at a point in time here in the city of Portland, we treat animals far better than human beings. That's insulting. It's really insulting. We've got to understand that. But again, that's what I'm saying. We just need some responsible leadership, and that we can deal with the issues and be able to articulate and educate the people about why we should be doing things. And I think it takes the kinds of folks like Jack's mindset and my mindset to be able to share with the folks so they'll come on board so we can solve this problem. In fact,
Bruce, if you need an auditor, let me know. I got a gal, they call her the Black Widow.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
I like the name right off the bat, but I agree with that, but we need a green widow too at the same time. I got to get some more bucks on the table. No problem. But I like that auditor deal. I like that. That's a vetting piece. Jack, you got anything else to say?
I think it's important to recognize that fiscal responsibility is both a state and a city issue. I've talked to people that have basically, their property taxes have been going up at such a dramatic rate that they've had to go back to work. They've retired, they're on pensions, and they've had to go back to work. And we're not talking about wealthy people. We're talking about people that live in modest little homes in the Lents area of Portland. I'll talk to another gentleman, Paul Knowles, who's been in Portland for decades. And he's telling me he may have to sell his business because he can't pay the property taxes on his small little plot of land with his barber shop or a hairstylist salon. We have to recognize that the city just cannot keep taxing and taxing because they're hurting the low-income people, small businesses, and cutting jobs. They're not doing good. They may be well-intentioned, but the outcomes are destructive.
Okay.
I'm starting to believe that they don't have benevolent intentions. The other thing I was going to comment on your point is that property value has been arbitrarily increased about 3% every year, regardless of any given local economy. And because of that, there's a time when the average person paid 20 to 25% of their gross income for rent or for a mortgage. Well, now people here in Oregon are spending as much as 50+% just to live.
Okay, so, well, hold your point, buddy. At that point in time, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll get back to you. We're going to take this short break now, and then we'll get right back to the folks. Hang in there. Go get your cup of coffee, folks. Get your tea. We'll be right back. Again, to this segment of Oregon Voters Digest, I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. And again, we're just going to continue the show from the last half an hour we've just done. And I might add, too, that you may want to share this with your neighbors and this, that, and the other, and you may have some comments or something to that effect. The whole process, as it relates to the Oregon Voters Digest, is to educate you and inform you. Very important time during this particular time. We're pretty well disorganized, but as far as I'm concerned, at the top of the heap, the president is doing his job, and after you got that swamp up there, which we identified early on, and they're fighting that. But trust me, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right in these United States. We're solid as a rock. Trust me. We're here to stay. And we're here to lead because we were leading this world, and we're still doing it. Okay. So I just want to let you know that we're going through a process now. Going through putting a whole slate of leaders back on the table. both from a local level and from a national level. And I want you to understand that. So it's very, very important that you read the material that you get, especially your voters pamphlet, and look at what the candidate's all about. Hopefully you got a phone number there that you can call candidates. I make sure I put my number in the on the listing. So if a person, I had a number of calls. People have called me and just wanted to know a couple of things, who I was and how real I was and whatever, and what I might do as mayor from their perspective. Now, those are good things to think about. So if you don't have that number, you can call up uh, the auditor's office. You can give them a call or call up Multnomah County, and they'll give you that number, because when they registered, they had to put that number down in the application process. So if you want to talk to them, call them. In fact, if they don't return your call, it kind of gives you an idea of what you're going to be looking at from representation. So that's why I'm saying that's why we do what we're doing. All right. Well, now let's get right into the discussion we're having now. We've got a couple of candidates that are on with us now. We're going to have another third candidate. He may join us a little later. A guy named Fred Stewart. You've seen Fred before, and I want to make sure that Fred gets involved. He's very much involved in community. He's run for office before, and he's a contributing factor of it. Then we got Paul Romero, who happens to be running for U.S. Senate, and that's a very interesting one. He's running against Jeff Merkley, and we wanted to make sure we did reach out to Jeff. Unfortunately, haven't been able to get him. We reached out with Earl Blumenauer, which is another person here locally, and most of the issues in the city of Portland actually is in Earl Blumenauer's district. Again, I reached out to him. He won't return his calls or the like. I don't know why. I mean, I'm a very simple person. I ask easy questions. While I'm looking at it, it's his job. He represents everyone. He's not Republican. He's not Democrat. He's an Oregonian, and he's a congressman, and that's what he's supposed to do, represent us all. Okay, we got that piece. So now we got Jack Kerford, who is running for city council. He's on today with us. Jack is running position 2. I think that's for the we had Nick Fish, who recently passed not too long ago. So consequently, we've got a number of people that are running for that particular office. And I reached out to Jack, and Jack has been very amenable to returning his call and talking to the issues and whatever. Even though the others are running, it's like anything else, that's what you have to do. We need to know. The public needs to know what's going on, and he's been right there. In fact, even as a result of that, I've even endorsed Jack. And with all due respect, he's there. I mean, he has a background and he has a resume. And, he knows what he's talking about. And there's the economic end of this whole race that we got to make sure we got some folks that are sitting up on that table. And once that city council is elected, and that they have some idea of what's going on, because that's going to be a big job, folks. It's going to be a big job running the city of Portland and also running the state of Oregon. Even though we have 2 senators and we have I think it was four congressmen, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 4 or 6. Maybe Paul would know better than that. And then we got Fred Stewart. Fred is a realtor. He's a local realtor. He's run for office before. Very, very much involved with the community. I mean, throughout the city of Portland, because he's a realtor. He does business throughout the city of Portland. So he has many conversations. He's very familiar with land use value and this, that, and the other, and property and the like. Very, very important. Housing, and he gets around, and he's got a heck of a background with reference to with public safety. He's very familiar with the whole issue of public safety, and that's a very important medium also too. And so anyway, we got Fred on. So I got some very competent individuals that are sitting here waiting, and we're going to go on and involve these guys. We're going to have a discussion. Like I said, we're going to try to discuss issues that will educate you a little bit more and know how to read and use that voters pamphlet. There's some ballot measures sitting on there that you need to know more about. Again, you got many candidates. I'm running for mayor. There's 19 people running for mayor of the city of Portland. This is my second time running for mayor. A gentleman by the name of Ed Wheeler is the present mayor. He ran the last time he won his seat. There was about 18 or 19 people that ran then. I finished third. I think it was third or fourth in that area. But it was a very interesting race. But again, I saw the lacking, again, the resume. So that was my big push when I said that you have to have a resume. You have to have something to come to the table to be able to solve these problems. This is not a fun and games type deal. This is not a who type routine. It's what can you bring to the table to better our way of life here in the state of Oregon. Deal with the issues, address with the issues. I'm not interested in the personality thing. It's at the bottom line. How can I help you get food on the table? You got to eat. Everybody has to eat. If you don't pay your bill, guess who has to pick it up? Taxpayers like myself and others who are working every day. So consequently, that's why I'm very interested in the whole issue with the homeless issue aspect of it. We have to audit and find out who's out there on the streets. And we got to basically get them back in production so they can contribute to the process as opposed to just taking it all. You've heard the old adage before. Person knocks on the door and says, hey, look here, I'd like to, you got any fish? You got any salmon? And then boom, it's just still, and he comes back the next day doing the same thing. Well, there's the old saying, sir, you give him a rod and a reel and let him go out and fish his own. You can do it that way. Pull a worm out of that good fresh dirt that we have around here. Get some fish. Anyway, I'm just giving you some simple deal, but you get the point that I'm making. So with that, let me bring the other group on. Paul, how you doing? We had Paul Romero on. Yeah, okay. Paul was on at the first half of the show, and for those of you who might have missed that part of the show, you might want to go back and you can Google it on YouTube, this, that, and the other, or you can get the reruns on the Oregon Voters Digest, which you're looking at now, and then from that point on, I think it'll be on Facebook too. Yes, we stream to Facebook also too. We'll be on Facebook too on Sundays, on this coming Sunday. Okay, all right, and that's the Sunday. We'll have a whole week then to really get into the campaign issues or whatever. I think I've said enough, but again, you got to vote. You got to make sure you get up and vote and read the material. Okay, don't let anybody sign your voting, your ballot aspect of it. Because some folks are doing that. They're cheating. They're really cheating. It's really a sad note. We'll vote by mail state, and then that's something that sometimes one gets concerned about. Okay, guys, are you there? Are we all here?
Absolutely.
I'm here.
Okay, fine. Okay, guys. Let's see. Let's talk about let's right off the bat here. Let's talk about let's talk about the homeless just for a moment here in the city of Portland, and let's get right up into that deal. And let's say that it may not be the major topic right now here in the city of Portland or state of Oregon, but it is it's a topic throughout the country for that matter. But coronavirus is another major topic. And so now, even though I slipped and talked about the workman comp aspect of it, maybe coronavirus might be the first topic we want to chat a little bit about it. I think Paul talked a little bit about it the first half hour a bit, but now what we're going to do is that we're going to get it around now in terms of what are we doing here in Oregon. As you know, we got we've got this whole wraparound deal. You don't know whether or not you got this deal about you got to stay at home. In most cases, the people are just to the point now they're just stressed out. And, they're trying to figure out, well, dude, I got to get out of my house. I got to breathe a bit, if you will. A lot of guys, they showed I noticed on TV today, they showed a great deal of people just running to the bars and getting a drink, getting that first shot of Jack Daniels or something. You know? The first thing that came to mind was when the president made the point about, maybe we ought to. He got to worried about that bleach, basically, would get rid of that bug of corona, of the bug, if you will, and the virus. Someone jumped on him about that piece. Then I started thinking about how my dad and the old folks in the old days would say, a shot of Jack would keep the doctor away. That was alcohol, and alcohol kills, and we use alcohol, if you will, to sterilize everything we got. So in some cases, we drink it. I can remember playing ball and this, that, and other, and busting my lip wide open. And what's the first thing we grabbed? We grabbed that. We grabbed alcohol, if you were rubbing alcohol, and just rub it all on the deal. I probably had to drink half of it when it was coming down. Aspect of it. So, and guess what? To kill the germs, right? You get me? So I would make the same statement. Whoever got that going, then maybe if that can kill the virus, then find out what the ingredients are and come up with a pill that you can give somebody if they're having some problem with coronavirus. So, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there from the standpoint. That's not the issue that we should be talking about. We got the WHO, World Health Organization, with all these doctors. That's their job. We're spending about a half a trillion dollars, on basically giving it to that group to find out where's the pill, or where's the shot that I'm going to be getting, or whatever, solve this problem. But anyway, I'm going all these discussions. I got to get these other guys to the table, and I think I've said enough at this point in time. So why don't we just, hey, Fred? Why don't we throw you in there real quick? Like, where you at? You got your situation all squared away?
Yeah, I'm ready to go whenever you are.
Ready to go? Well, I'm ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and talk to us. Talk to us a little bit.
Can you see me? Can you see me?
Well, I saw you. I didn't see you the first half, but I saw you this time. I'm seeing you this time.
All right.
Okay, go on. All right, talk to us.
Hey, Bruce. Well, you said you wanted to talk about the homeless.
Let's go.
And, you know, the homeless situation in Portland is very complicated because, like I said the last time we talked about it, we're going to have to accept that there are some people we're going to have to house. There are some people that, unlike, you know, years before, there's no other place for them to go right now but the street. And then we've got to build more housing. We've got a housing shortage here in Portland. People keep forgetting that a lot of people are moving to Portland. We've got a group of people who don't want anything to change. They don't want to be part of the changing Portland, Oregon. They want things to stay the same. And Portland's never stayed the same. Portland's been growing every single month since April of 1849. It's been growing every single month. That's when people started making Portland, 1849. It goes back that far. And I tell people, you know, the issue we've got is simple in some areas and complicated in the other areas, but it comes down to, you know, three most important things. Like I said before, one, there are people we're going to have to fund where they live for the rest of their life. People who are disabled and are not economically wealthy or economically doing well at all. They're on public assistance. That includes some people in the mental health, issues. They are never going to be able to take care of themselves, and we're going to have to provide housing for them. Two, we've got to build more housing, a lot more housing. Okay, and that means that we're going to have to make some sacrifices. We've got areas of Portland that we resisted doing development in that we're going to have to do some development in. We're going to have to increase the speed of getting development going in this town. It's very expensive and very time consuming, which equals, time equals money. It's very expensive in all facets of developing housing in Portland. We need people in city council that recognize that and are going to be looking for ways to lower that cost so more housing can be developed. We need it for two reasons. One, we need more housing for people to live. But we also need to increase the tax base, especially after this coronavirus, where the cities, counties, our governments in general are losing so much money. Long term, we need to increase the tax base. So that means we need more housing, especially, like I said, because of the corona. And the last but not least thing that we need when it comes to housing is we need to accept that we need a cohesive plan to address people who have fallen down and just need a little help getting up. When I was running for office in 2016, I talked about the loss and the impact that it has had of the YMCA. 50 years ago, Bruce, when I was born, if a guy moved into a new town, he had the option of staying at the YMCA if he couldn't find any place else. Yep. Very cheap and affordable housing until he got on his feet, and he had a place to build from in a city. We don't have that right now. If
Why
you
not?
fall down,
Why not? What happened to it?
well, it's because of the cost of housing. Providing housing is expensive. It's not cheap. Managing it. You got to build it, then you got to manage it. Especially when you get into housing that's transient, very expensive. And the YMCA, for whatever reason, isn't providing these housing opportunities like they used to. Well, the city has to develop an environment where maybe somebody else will come in and take their place, or maybe the city has to provide it, or the county. But bottom line, we need that type of transient housing in our market where people can come in, even if it's in a squad bait kind of situation, where they can come in, have a cheap, affordable space to live while they're developing themselves to be able to be on their own.
What
We
about
don't have
mental
that
health?
anymore.
What about mental health? Like I say, we're talking about homelessness aspect of it now, but what about mental health? I mean, at one point in time, back then, damage. Remember, we had damage, right? We had damage.
But Bruce, the state
Now all of
can't
a sudden we
afford
don't
it.
have it. These people out on the street. What do you do?
Bruce, we can't afford it. The reason why in '93 the state of Oregon shut down most of its beds for mental, and we still have about 1,600 beds. We've dropped down from about 4,500 or so to about 1,600. The reason is back in '93 we couldn't afford it. The bill to take care of, like, let's say 5,000 mentally challenged people at the state level, 27 years ago was over $300 million. And that's probably not counting the lawsuits that we had. We still haven't buried all the people that died in damage between 1900 and 1975. We still haven't buried those bodies because we don't have the money. We literally got their ashes sitting on a shelf down in Salem because we don't have the money to dispose of them.
I heard it was a bunch of developers got together and picked that property up and made all kinds of millions.
Well, I'm sure that happened afterwards, but we're not the only state that looked at the bill for mental health and said we can't afford it, especially when the federal government started pulling out of it like it did. Back up until Ronald Reagan, and I'm not blaming everything on Reagan, but up until Ronald Reagan, the federal government helped foot the bill for a lot of the support for mental health people.
All right.
Starting in 1981, starting in 1981, the Congress and the Republicans, said, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do it as much anymore. And it took, for Oregon, it took about 10, 12 years for us to finally say, we just can't afford this. I mean, if it was 300 million plus in 1993, what do you think that bill would be today? Especially when we've got this big bill with PERS. Now, I'm not blaming PERS, but I'm just saying we've got enough, humongous bills to pay.
Hold up for a minute on that point there. Hold up for a minute on that particular point. Jack, why don't you come on in here? You guys want to say anything? Are you or Paul in regards to that? I'm like Fred. I want him to continue on.
Well, I think you're right that there are a lot of issues that are here. And like you said, in 1981, we saw not only the reduction of federal investment in mental health facilities, but also in public housing as well. And so a cost is an issue. And you point out very well that the PERS gap that we have for the state employees, for federal employees, state employees and city employees is substantial. And it's going to get even more, a greater gap between the gap of what they're supposed to provide and have in the reserve and what they actually have. So the PERS debt, because of this economic downturn, is going to get dramatically worse. So Fred, points you've made so far, you and I are aligned on that completely.
Okay.
Well, the problem is, and I'm not.
Let's get Paul. Let's get Paul's reaction. Hey, Fred, hold up for a moment. Let's get Paul's reaction. Then I want you to think. Go on.
Okay.
Go on, Paul.
It's great. Hey, good to see you. I'm in agreement with both of Jack and Fred here. But the other things that I know is that the way the state has managed increasing property values to fundamentally increase their tax base. It's all about continuing that growth, even though a local economy doesn't justify the property value increases that are being implemented. Okay. So this has created this problem. I mean, I'm from Prineville, Oregon, and this 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhouse I was staying in was about $800 a month. By the time I left, after 2 years, when I left, I was paying almost $1,000 a month. And when I left, they jumped that rent all the way up to $1,300.
Yeah, but Paul, the reason why he's doing that, I mean, I grew up here in Oregon. I mean, and you probably did too.
Yes.
I remember going to Prineville when I was in high school. You know, Prineville was just a dusty little old town back then. You know what I'm talking about? But look how much it's changed. We got people moving from around the world to the Prineville area. And you've met some of these people. What I'm getting to is your property is in more demand. And you're suffering. Your market is suffering from the same thing we're suffering in Portland, but for similar reasons. We're not building houses fast enough. The way you cure the supply and demand problem is you increase supply. We need to stop voting for people who can't count. You know what I mean? We get these people who are like, hey, we don't want nothing to change. And I can understand. You got people, I know some people in Prineville who, when they walk outside their house, they're mad at all the brand new big old Dodge Ram trucks. You know what I mean? Because that means they're yuppies. You got all these yuppies living in Prineville. You know what I mean? And they're like, they need to go away. And if we stop building houses in Prineville, maybe they won't come.
Well, let's get Paul. Let Paul get in here for a minute. I want Paul to get in. He's sitting on his chair. Go on, Paul.
Okay.
Talk to him.
The problem in Prineville is that there's not really the jobs that will sustain anybody to be able to afford the rent or the mortgages. Okay. And they've not allowed, the state of Oregon controls zoning throughout the state. And one of the things I tell the counties are that it's time for the counties to take back that control. The counties need to decide what is most economically viable for their own citizens. Okay. They are more in touch with what's really there, what's really needed. The state, on the other hand, just does this blanket 3% every year. And I think they've taken the cap off that so they can increase that even more just to increase their tax base. So it's just another way to kind of rob the public without their real input to it. Now, it grows property values to the point that the people that live there can't even afford to live there.
Hey, Paul,
yes.
There's something you're forgetting about your area. And I'm not saying I know your area better than you do, but I'm in real estate and I pay attention to stuff. There is an influence that you're not really paying attention to, and I want you to. About 10% or close to it of the people who live in that area, right? They work from home. They're internet-based companies that they work for. You see, we're coming into a time where, and we're here already, we're not just coming into it, where because of the internet, there are people who don't have to go to work every day as far as going to a brick and mortar. They go to their laptop. You understand? They can live anywhere on planet Earth. Now think about it. If you could pick anywhere you would want to live on planet Earth, I ain't saying Prineville would be in the top 10, but Prineville would probably be in the top 200. You get my meaning? You understand? There's somebody going, you know what? I'm going to live in the Prineville area, and I'm going to work from home in one of my big old badass Oregon homes. Yeah. You know, I say it's somewhere between about 7 and 10% of the population in your area, to some degree, whether it's the main breadwinner or the wife or the secondary income owner, they work from home, and that's an influence that's growing in your area. You understand? And that's why you're like, how can somebody afford these prices? Well, that's where it's coming from. It's not big yet, but you see, you need people in government in your area who are visionaries and understand that this is a market trend that if anything is going to grow. You understand? Let's say it's only 7% right now. What do you think it's going to be 20 years from now?
When the state limits the ability for any community to grow, and that includes Portland, okay, they greatly reduce the ability to actually put some more homes and brick and mortar businesses and stuff. They're the ones limiting that whole process, So,
and you're right. You're right.
A higher demand than it should really be there, and that increases prices. That's really, we're dealing with a artificial inflation of property values throughout Oregon. This is the underlying issue for the housing issue that we have. It really is. There are people that move to Bend that are qualified with great educations to do great job. But once they get to Bend, I had one guy, he's the CEO of a company. He had a great guy coming in to work for him. He had to put him up in his summer home in Sun River. And then the fact is the guy couldn't find a place to live, even though he had the money, and he had to go back to California, you know? So this, and then the worst part for me in Prineville is that I can't tell you how many storefronts all through Prineville are empty, you know? And the truth is we still have a blue collar workforce that doesn't work from home, that doesn't work from their computer, and they have to be addressed too. And we have a governor who's literally killing all the jobs. Where are the manufacturing jobs? I have a company, we're trying to do a startup here in Oregon for manufacturing, assembly, everything in Oregon. But we got a CAT tax, a gross receipts tax, that has slowed us down as trying to decide what we're going to do. But I still want to put it all here in Oregon. But if this continues, if we don't get a governor in office, we don't get a good legislature in there that is really working for Ogonians and not the Chinese, we're going to be stuck here. So the
don't get me going about this effort to get this carbon tax going.
Fred,
carbon tax stuck.
Let's get Jack in here for a minute. Let's get Jack in.
I just want to make a couple of comments. We've got to recognize what the drivers are for the people moving to Oregon. For the West Coast, from British Columbia down to California, this area is the lowest cost of living. So a cost is there, climate is there, and all the outdoor activities. So it's a real magnet for people and for companies to come to this part of the United States from that standpoint. I mean, the cost of living in Portland is maybe 2 or 3% higher per year than states like large cities, let's say like Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin from that standpoint. So that's one draw. The other factor, if we want to talk about real estate, we have to recognize that in British Columbia, in Vancouver specifically, they actually put a limit on the amount of foreign investment, basically from foreign people coming in and buying property for long-term investment, driving up the prices in Vancouver, British Columbia. You've seen that talking to the realtors that I've talked to, that you already started to see that a few years ago in Seattle. Now, I had a real estate agent tell me a year or so ago, he had someone come in from Hong Kong who said, gee, is there any small little accommodation that I can find for $5 million? He said, oh, I think we can help you. So we've got to recognize from that standpoint when we're talking about overseas investment or speculation, because it's really speculation. I'm not against anti-immigration at all, but I am against property speculation. And we've got to be somewhat cautious about that to ensure that it doesn't drive out the low income and the people that live here and have grown up here.
If we build more housing, we don't have to worry about it.
I mean, completely.
The issue is, I mean, and as far as people coming from Hong Kong, this has been going on for 25 years. People from Hong Kong moving to the West, moving to British Columbia, Seattle, even a little bit here in Oregon. And those are long-term investments because they're leaving Hong Kong. Right. It's not like they're speculating. They're getting the hell out of there and moving and bringing their wealth here. And that's nothing but good for us. But the biggest underlying problem is we've got a group of people who do not know how or do not want to increase the amount of housing that's being developed, in this state, especially in Portland, even down there in Prineville. And because of that, we're seeing upward pressure on housing that keeps it out, further and further out of the reach for a lot of people who are in the blue collar economic level. And, we've even seen this during the coronavirus. Have values been affected in Portland during the coronavirus? Absolutely. Have they dropped a little bit? Yeah, kind of, not much. You know what I mean? And in some zip codes, they've actually gone up. In some zip codes, they've actually gone up. But, when you figure we've been in lockdown for 2 months now, and everybody's been waiting for the real estate to crash, to crater, that hasn't happened. There's no indication that it's going to happen. Actually, we're thinking when the state opens up, it's going to be crazy It's going to be a bum rush real estate.
Fred, let me ask you a question.
What we saw in 2011, 2012.
Fred, let me ask you a question. You just answered the deal. Now we're trying to figure out where's the solution. What creates the homeless? You just answered that. So what do we do about these people that are in these tents sitting right downtown?
Well, you know, in Portland, great example would be to go over to 42nd and Killingsworth and use that great big piece of land that Adams High School used to be on, and create a major homeless camp where people can live there, you know, permanently. We need a permanent transit homeless camp here in Portland, and that includes using Wapato. I would still, you know, use Wapato, but the only thing that concerns me about Wapato is eventually the city or the county is going to end up footing the bill for a mental hospital. Eventually, there's going to be a lawsuit, and that thing is going to become an incredibly good investment for those investors that bought it, because that's going to probably end up being our mental hospital. We're going to have to get the mentally challenged off the street, just for, you know, moral reasons and humanity reasons. We're going to have to get them off the street.
Paul's got he wanted to ask a question.
You know, remember we were talking about how the people that are running our state right now, they're creating conditions that create a good environment for homeless, okay? So it actually attracts them. One thing you learn about the homeless is that they have a great communications network and they communicate with each other regularly, okay? So for one thing I was told last night during one of my lives on Facebook was that heroin addicts, right, are given up to a 2-month supply out of Portland, courtesy of the state. Since when is the state giving drugs out to people like that? Really?
Because it's cheaper than the law enforcement than we spend on them. No, the conditions that for the homeless are urban growth boundary, Paul, that started way back, you know, in the early 70s. And there's something that does need to be revisited, because we had no idea this thing, the internet, was going to happen. We live a lot differently than we did, you know, 50 years ago. And, you know, maybe the concept of urban growth boundaries shouldn't be statewide. Maybe Portland should have an urban growth boundary, but maybe Prineville shouldn't. Or if Prineville has an urban growth boundary, maybe Prineville's urban growth boundary needs to be wider. No matter what the leading phase of this, the leading point of this is developing of more housing. Because by the year 2050, we're going to have at least 1.5 million to 2 million more people living in Oregon than we do today.
Hey, Fred, I don't want to forget about this providing heroin, the state providing heroin to the addicts on the street. You gotta give me a little closure to that piece. Where the hell are these people gonna go?
That's the reason why cities around the world.
Wait a minute. Paul's got an answer here. Well, where's that heroin coming from?
It's a good question. Who's Portland's supplier to hand 2 months worth of heroin out to a heroin addict in Portland? I mean, now you know why all the heroin addicts are headed to Portland.
Well, we're not the only city that does that. Seattle does it, Los Angeles does it, San Francisco does it. Most major cities, most of the top 30 cities all do it.
Fred, let him answer the question.